It was a quiet evening when my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a message from Emma. I didn't expect anything unusual. Our days had become routine, predictable, even dull at times. But the words on the screen stopped me cold. Maybe we need to break up. I stared at the message, trying to process it. It was brief, casual almost, but beneath the simplicity lay a storm of meaning. Emma wasn't asking. She was hinting, warning, perhaps even testing me. My mind raced, sorting through the past few months. The distant looks, the cold replies, the nights she stayed late without explanation. All the small signs, now glaringly obvious, pointed to the same conclusion. Something was deeply wrong. I didn't respond immediately. I could feel the familiar pull of panic, anger, and hurt rising, but I held it back. I had learned that immediate reaction rarely works in moments like these. Instead, I chose silence for a few minutes, letting the weight of her words sink in fully. Then slowly, deliberately, I typed my reply. Maybe you're right, I wrote. Maybe we do need to break up. But before we make any decisions, let's meet tomorrow. No distractions, no phones, no excuses. Just honesty. I hit send and waited. Emma's response came almost instantly. What? That's not what I expected. I thought you'd beg, fight, or plead. I smiled, a quiet, almost imperceptible curl of lips. She had expected a reaction, a performance, emotional chaos, desperation, fear. But instead, I had delivered calm and clarity. My reply wasn't manipulation, it was strategy. It wasn't out of pride. It was out of control over my own emotions. The next day, we met at a quiet coffee shop. No drama, no raised voices, just two people sitting across from each other, facing what had long been avoided. Emma fidgeted with her hands, her confident facade cracking with every passing second. She started to speak, to explain, to justify, but I didn't interrupt. I let her reveal the full truth. The growing distance, the fleeting attractions, the dissatisfaction she had kept buried. As she spoke, I noticed the patterns I had missed before. The small lies, the subtle avoidance, the lack of emotional engagement. It all made sense now. But I remained calm, listening without judgment, noting every inconsistency, every half-truth. She expected anger, tears, a dramatic confrontation. But what she received was observation, clarity, and quiet resolve. By the time our conversation ended, Emma realized that her casual threat had no power over me. My composure, my refusal to be drawn into panic, and my insistence on truth had shifted the dynamic completely. She hadn't expected control. She had expected chaos. Over the next few days, the tension between us became palpable, though subtle. Emma tried to act as though nothing had changed, but I could see the unease in her eyes. Every casual glance, every forced smile, was a reminder that my calm, measured response had shifted the balance of power. She had expected desperation, emotional pleading, maybe even guilt-driven surrender. But instead she faced clarity and control. I began observing her more closely, not with paranoia, but with careful attention. The late-night texts she claimed were work-related, the subtle excuses to avoid shared dinners, the fleeting smiles at her phone. Each became a piece of the puzzle I had been silently assembling. I realized that the threat of breaking up wasn't a sudden revelation. It had been building quietly, nurtured by months of emotional distance and unspoken frustration. One evening, I decided to escalate subtly, not through confrontation, but through presence. I spent more time focused on my routines, my work, my friends, and my hobbies. I didn't ignore her, but I also didn't cater to her insecurities or whims. Emma noticed immediately. The tension in the house shifted. Her glances were sharper, her words more calculated, her attempts to draw me into arguments met with calm deflection. I had become a mirror she could not control, a constant reminder that her threat carried less weight than she had imagined. Finally, I scheduled a follow-up conversation, one that would clarify boundaries and expectations. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, coffee steaming between us. Emma began with her rehearsed explanations, stress, dissatisfaction, longing for something different. But this time, I didn't just listen. I engaged thoughtfully, asking questions that revealed inconsistencies, noting behaviors she couldn't rationalize. Her frustration became obvious. She expected chaos, a dramatic emotional reaction, a display that would validate her own sense of power. Instead, she encountered strategic calm. I responded with clarity, not anger, with patience, not panic. Every attempt she made to manipulate the narrative was countered with reason and observation. She realized, finally, that her casual threat of breaking up had no leverage. That night, as she left the house for a supposed walk to clear her head, I watched quietly. There was no need to follow, no need to accuse. The truth had already shifted the dynamic. Emma's confidence was diminished, replaced by uncertainty. She had expected me to react. She had not expected composure and insight. The power of calm clarity had altered the course of the relationship before any final decisions were even made. The turning point came a week later. Emma had become increasingly tense. Her casual threats now replaced by subtle attempts to negotiate, to sway, to regain some semblance of control. I invited her to sit down one evening and laid out my perspective. Not with anger, not with blame, but with clarity. Emma, I said, voice steady, we need honesty. If we're going to stay together, it has to be real. No excuses, no distractions, no hidden agendas. Her face paled, the confident mask she had worn so easily beginning to crack. She tried to explain, to soften the edges of her words, but I had learned to listen carefully, to catch every nuance, every inconsistency. Her hesitation, her half-truths, were more revealing than any confession. I didn't interrupt, didn't argue. I simply let the silence amplify the weight of the truth. Over the following days, I maintained my composure while continuing to observe. I didn't chase her, didn't plead, didn't beg. I focused on my routines, my work, and my personal growth. The tension in the house became a mirror of her own guilt. She realized that the threat of breaking up no longer scared me. My calm, my strategic patience, and my clear expectations had shifted the balance. For the first time, she faced the reality that her casual threats carried no power. Finally, I gave her a choice, not as a challenge but as a boundary. Emma, I said, we can move forward together if you are honest and committed. Or we can step back and reconsider. But I won't be manipulated or treated as if my emotions are optional. She looked at me, a mix of fear and realization washing over her face. The casual control she had once wielded had evaporated. She had expected chaos, but instead encountered clarity, patience, and strategy. Over the next few weeks, Emma had to confront her own decisions. Her attempts to manipulate or charm no longer worked. I maintained calm, consistency, and observation. Slowly, the power of truth and clarity began to reshape the relationship, or end it. She saw clearly that my calm resolve was not weakness, it was strength. And strength in this case had the final say. When the moment finally came to decide the future, the atmosphere was quiet, almost surreal. Emma understood that her words, her threats, and her actions had consequences. My reply to her initial text, a calm, strategic, and thoughtful response, had set the tone for the entire process. She had expected panic. She had expected chaos. What she got was clarity, patience, and unshakable resolve. In the end, whether we stayed together or went our separate ways, one thing was undeniable. I had maintained control over my emotions, my choices, and my future. Emma had learned a powerful lesson about assumptions, manipulation, and the consequences of testing patience. My response had shocked her, not through anger, but through clarity. And in that, I discovered an unexpected truth. Strength isn't loud. Strength is calm, observant, and deliberate.